You're listening to the Confidence Within podcast. If you are a successful professional entrepreneur who is nonetheless struggling with the fear of public speaking, then you are in the right place. This podcast is all about igniting your inner confidence, learning to show up with genuine authority and brilliance, and becoming the best version of yourself. I'm your host, Victoria Lesnyansky, and welcome to my show. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Confidence Within podcast. Have you ever felt like you're doing all the right things in life, but something still feels off? Maybe you're chasing success, but not feeling truly fulfilled, or your relationships are starting to feel like they're running on autopilot. Well, my guest today is here to help you change that. I am so excited to welcome Katie Rössler, a licensed therapist and coach who specializes in helping high achievers create visionary lives. With 15 years of experience, Katie has guided countless individuals and couples through burnout, hidden grief, and the emotional blocks to turn their dreams into actionable plans. She is also the author of The New Face of Grief and Giving Birth to Motherhood. And she works with top companies to enhance team dynamics and workplace wellness. Please welcome Katie to the show. Hi, Katie. I am so excited to welcome you to my podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Victoria. I'm excited to dive into this conversation today.
Yeah, and it's going to be very, very exciting and very interesting for our listeners because I have never had somebody like you on my podcast. So I cannot wait to get started. But let's begin by talking about something that absolutely everyone is interested in learning more about. I am talking about having a more fulfilling life. All of us humans, we may be very different, but I think in one thing we are all the same. We're all searching for happiness and fulfillment. So what does it mean to you to have a fulfilling life?
Well, this is a great question, a great way to start our conversation. You know, what it means to me to have a fulfilling life is a very subjective experience, right? So for me, it's about being able to experience more joy in life than any other emotion. And joy to me is in the context of relationships. It's in the context of the relationship with my 3 girls, with my husband, with my friends, with my extended family, with the people that I work with. It's being able to be present in the moment and not always thinking about what's next or being stuck in the past. And so a fulfilling life to me is really relational. It's really mindful, very present, like I said. And it's, for me, the fulfilling part is just that my heart feels completely full. And I think that, again, goes back to the just being in relationships that bring me joy and doing things that bring me joy.
And you know, it sounds so simple, right? Sounds so simple. So why, when it's so simple to have a fulfilling life, we often don't feel fulfilled? What do you think are some of the roadblocks that very often we create ourselves, or some self-sabotage that we experience that block our road to fulfillment?
Yeah, I think we often block our road to fulfillment because it doesn't always match what we've been, in a sense, kind of conditioned to think that we need or want. So when in my background, so though I live in Germany, I'm American, and I grew up in a military family, and we moved around all the time, but there's always the context of you will do well in school. You will do well in school because you need to get a good job. You will go to university, then maybe your master's if you need to, but you will be dependent on yourself. And at 18, it was like, by that point, I was so motivated to be on my own and like do my own thing. I was like, I will do this. And I went into a field of work, or what I was studying at the university, thinking this is what I want to do, without stopping and going, is this really my heart's desire? And like many, we go to university kind of being pushed into, well, this is where they say the money is, or this is what they say the future for women is. And I went into physics pre-med, wanting to be a doctor. I also, prior to that, thought I was going to do biomedical engineering. Really glad I didn't do that. My dad was more excited about the classes than I was, and that was the sign. This is not for me. But from there, I realized that my calling was really more in the world of psychology. I mean, think about it. I'd moved around my whole life. I always was meeting new people. I was learning how to listen and to adapt, to study people so I knew how to be in group situations. It was really fascinating when I stopped and thought about how my life map, in a sense, had been pointing me in the world of psychology. And specifically in therapy, people always shared their stuff with me. So I was always that person, that friend or that family member people talk to about things. And I immediately was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this as a therapist. And I went down this path. And there are times in my journey that I look back and I go, was that really me wanting to do that? Or was that more my ego around how others would see me, how my family would appreciate me, or what my friends would think of me? And the more that I look at life from that spectrum of, is my ego getting in the way? Is my concern about what others will think of me getting in the way? I start to realize the mountains I'm putting, the self-sabotaging things I'm putting in the way. And I also truly believe that those of us who are not really living a life of fulfillment, that's why we burn out. Because as I shared with you, mine is joy in the context of relationship, being present in the moment, and enjoying what I'm doing and how I serve people and how I work. None of that is burnout level work. Even the work that I do with people, yes, for some that might burn them out, but for me, it energizes me. It gives me even more a sense of fulfillment and purpose. But if I come at life from, well, but I also want to go do this, and I also want to go do that, and I want to write this book, and I've done it. I've written the books, I've spoken on the stages, and I still had to come home and like take care of my 3 little girls and be a mom and, take care of stuff around the house and plan our next vacation. I'm human, right? It's when we start to get in the way of ourselves by thinking there's way more to it. That's going to be when I feel more fulfilled. That's going to be when I've really reached this ultimate goal. That's when I'll have reached the pinnacle of my career, that we get in our way and we burn ourselves out because we're really going towards something that isn't actually going to be fulfilling. We get to it and we're like, what's the next goal? We can't even enjoy it, even if it's something for years we've been planning. And I recently heard someone sharing about specifically the Olympics and how in a matter of minutes, we see people earn medals, right? And break records. And it's amazing. And we only think of like, wow, those 3 minutes or 10 minutes or however long, look what they did. But it was 10 to 15 years of training. And they were dedicated because it was fulfilling to them to do that. They wanted to do that. Yes, they wanted that 3 minutes or 10 minutes of reaching that, level where they get the award or whatever. But it was also because they enjoyed what they were doing. And we often forget that that journey is just as important as that 3 minutes that led to the gold medal, right?
Yeah.
So our blocks often are ego formed or that conditioning where we think this is what others want for us. And so we should, or we have to do or be these things. And it can really stop us from experiencing that fulfilling life that we're all made to have.
I want to take just a quick moment to share something special with you that I know will resonate. If your struggle with public speaking anxiety prevents you from showing up as the leader and expert that you know you are, I totally get it. I've been there. That's why I created a free guide for you, 5 proven steps to boost your public speaking confidence right now. This guide is packed with practical tips you can implement immediately to help you calm your nerves, command the room, and speak with genuine confidence. You can grab it right now at guide.confidencewithinpodcast.com. All right, let's dive back into the conversation. But lot of times, you're pretty much on autopilot, right? You already started your career, you finished school, you got a job, and you're maybe 20 years into your career, you're making good money. You don't feel happy. You don't feel fulfilled. But you have a family to support. You're right, you're working. Question number one for you is how to analyze this feeling of lacking something and analyze it correctly. That it's not just, well, I'm just, I don't know, everybody's changing careers, maybe I should too. But really look inside yourself and say, am I moving in the right direction? Am I going towards fulfillment, or am I going towards massive disappointment in life and then crisis? And that's question number one. How do you analyze this? And question number two is, if you do realize that, well, I'm on the wrong path, how do you find the strength to change things when you maybe, again, 20 years, 25 years into your career?
That's a great question. So the answer to your first one, I really love the wheel of life and using analysis tools like that, where it has you look on a scale of 1 to 10, where do I feel like I am in my career? Where do I feel like I am in my personal growth, in my relationship, in personal development, as far as like education and things? And so when you scale 1 to 10, where do you think you are? You get to say, actually, I'd really like this to be higher. This isn't really where I want it to be. Wow, when I really take a moment and step back and look at this area of my life, I see that it's not as fulfilling as I want it to be. My health, right? Your health's at a 4 and you would want it to be at an 8 at this age that you're in, what's happening that you're putting your health as a lower priority and not taking care of yourself, or your relationships, or whatever it might be? So I love analysis tools like that just make you stop and take stock of your life. And it's not goal focused. We're not looking at like, what are my goals and how can I get there? It's, let's just look at life from the beginning to now. Where is it on a scale of 1 to 10? And this is the piece where you have to be really careful, because your brain will go, well, but I mean, I should be happier. I should be more grateful. No, if it's a 4 and it's not a 10, it's okay. That is your subjective number for it. But that's what you are feeling or thinking in that moment. And then what you do from there, if you realize, wow, I'm not really fulfilled or happy. Let's be honest, most people go through this in a time of midlife, because we've kind of already built the career to some level. We've got the family if we wanted it, or maybe we didn't want it, but we have a family now. Hopefully we have some stability in where we live, right? Like, okay. And then there's just a space where you kind of hit this age and you're like, oh, wait, I need to really take some reflection, analysis tool, or whatever you want, and go, am I happy? But most people don't stop and do that, but subconsciously we are doing that. And so when subconsciously we are reflecting on, am I happy? And we're not consciously doing it. Our subconscious mind goes into pissed off teenager. I'm not happy. I'm going to go do some stupid things probably. And I use stupid in quotations, but do some things that will negatively impact me and those around me in the long term. Instead of, I'm not happy. How do I get from a 4 to an 8? What are the steps I'm willing to take? Because it sure as heck didn't happen overnight that I got to a 4. So it's not going to be overnight that I get to an 8. So what are the things that I want to do to work on this? When I work with couples who are in this midlife zone and just going like, this is not fulfilling. I'm not happy. I go, okay, good. Now we know where we're starting from. And I talk about tearing down the relationship house as they know it and rebuilding together. Just because you're not happy and because the relationship isn't fulfilling doesn't mean it can't be. But we assume it'll never change. They've not changed. I won't change. It won't change. And we get into this cycle, just like we might in our career. I'm stuck. I can't get out of this. It'll never change. I'm just here. We get in this cycle of making it worse for ourselves instead of going, if I could tear it all down, what type of career would I build? What type of relationship would I build? What would my health look like? What would my personal development and spiritual growth look like? What, all these different areas. We just think we're stuck because we don't want to put in the work like the Olympians of the years to get to that 3 minutes of, whoo, wow, right? But the only way for us to know how to develop a fulfilling life is to have an honest reflection of what's making us unhappy. What have we signed up for and didn't realize we'd signed up for? What are the things we want to start to shift and change? And then making a plan of how to do it, knowing you can't put too many eggs in one basket. I can't be like, all of my focus is now on my health. Well, then I'm going to lack areas of working on certain other things that are important, right? It's us learning then, how do I have like a goal in this area of my life and a goal in this area and a goal in this area, and remind myself to stick with it? What will be my motivators? What will help me to develop that fulfilling life as I want it to be, or that fulfilling relationship? Is it getting accountability and getting support, right? Is it having friends and a group that's going through it too? These are all things that we have to sit down and think about. But if we don't stop and take that assessment and go, am I happy? In what areas of my life am I happy or not? Even if on paper it looks great. I hear that often, but on paper it looks good. Great, but you're not fulfilled by it. So awesome. You did what your parents hoped you would do, your grandparents or whomever. Great. But now you're there and it's not what you want. So why don't we metaphorically tear down the house and go, what do we want this to look like? And I think as a kid who moved every 2 to 3 years at the beginning of the first 18 years of her life, I'm like, it's so easy to do. You just start over. And I know that that's not comfortable for people. That's not comfortable, the idea of having to, quote, start over. But sometimes it's a mental start over. It's not an actual physical start over.
Right. I love this. I love this. And this applies to so many people. But you know what's interesting? I was thinking of a different category of people who are overachievers. And when they would do this self-reflection exercise, they would actually see their life as worse than it actually is. For example, they would minimize the accomplishment, they would minimize their successes. It's kind of like the other end of the spectrum.
Yes.
How would you deal with that? How can you, what kind of advice can you give to those people who tend to minimize everything that's great in their life because, well, there is something bigger there and I'm not there yet?
Right. It's funny because it's not just high achievers that do this. When I do relationship assessments for couples, if I have a German guy or girl in the mix, they will rate everything lower than it actually is. And I've had conversations later with the couples once we start working together, and they will even joke, nothing could ever be a 10. And when you gave me that question, what is it on the scale of 1 to 10? I had to remember it can never be a 10. And it would be very unlikely to be a 9 if I'm calling you for an assessment. So it's got to be something lower. So there can be cultural influence in there too, or family influence as well. But if you know that about yourself, that you're very driven and it is hard for you to take stock of the good and the bad, and not just hyper focus on the bad and what needs to be improved, then rate it whatever number you're going to give it and add 1 or 2 points. That's all you got to do. And go, okay, well, I think it's a 4. It's probably, to everybody else, probably a 6, maybe even a 7. I don't feel fulfilled and happy with it. So what is that that's unsettled within me that makes it so that I can't be happy or comfortable with it? And that's often where there's some personal work that needs to be done. Because again, like I said in the beginning, we can lead ourselves to burnout if we are doing things that actually aren't fulfilling, but we think because we want to be the best and we want to surpass XYZ. But then we get there and go, oh, actually, I didn't want this. I'm not really happy with this, right? That's when we go, okay, and now I'm exhausted and I feel even more lack of purpose and I'm just not enjoying anything in life now, right? And then you're like, okay, was that worth it? No. It's very hard for people like that to not hit, in a sense, rock bottom in quotations before they realize that. It's kind of like a speeding train. It's like, no, slow down. No, I'm made for speed. That's the piece where I hear your question. And I'm thinking, it's like me telling these German individuals, well, it probably is a 9, even though you've rated it a 6. And then being like, but I'm made to believe it's a 6. I'm like, okay, it's a 6 for you. That's great. What would be, and I'll even ask, what would make you happy? Oh, it's an 8. That would make me happy. And I'm like, okay, there we are. So it really is an 8 and a 10 is your 8. Like,
Right.
your 6 is your 8. Yeah. And your 8 is your 10. So that might be something too, is to ask yourself, at what number would I actually be happy? Does it actually need to be a 10 or would it be an 8?
Yeah. I am seeing this with a lot of my clients where they truly minimize their achievements. Simply because, not because they do it consciously, simply because we tend to forget
Mm-hmm.
all the great things that we've done because, I don't know, they just don't stick, right? A lot of times you would have some really great accomplishments, really big achievements, but unless you write them down, unless you consciously think about them, they they don't really stay there in your mind consistently, and you keep on forgetting about that, which of course generates a lot of other issues like imposter syndrome, etc. But I kind of feel like it's very, very important to focus on your accomplishments, right? To celebrate your accomplishments, because if we don't, we are not going to remember about them. And what we're going to remember anything negative that happened, because negative things are the ones that tend to stick. You know,
Yeah.
that somebody says something negative to you at work, you're going to remember it forever. Somebody praises an achievement, you're going to forget about it in a day. So, what are your thoughts on celebrating accomplishments and how does it help?
Yeah. Well, I mean, our brains are wired for a negativity bias, right? It keeps us alive. That's why we often will see a snake and it's just a caterpillar. Our brains are wired to protect us. And so we hear something negative, oh, this is bad. And we hyper focus on that. And when you look at the brain, it's really fascinating because the part that controls our fight or flight is small. It's very tiny. And when you look at the picture of a brain, like from the side, you'll see it's kind of like this almond shape called the amygdala. It's what's driving us to be like, oh, bad. Oh no, this is so horrible. He said this thing or she said this thing or they did this thing. And then the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that hugs the amygdala, just remembers everything from our childhood that reminds us of feeling less than, failing, being rejected, whatever, right? Like the way that we've told the story in our minds that we've held on to. So then when the boss says something negative or you get some feedback you didn't like from your partner, you hyper focus on that. We all are actually wired towards that. Even if you've met super positive people, they more than likely are having to actively or proactively train themselves to not be that way. So, yes, I call it the unbucket list. So, you have your bucket list of all the things that you want to accomplish and do and see. And you've got to create an unbucket list. And you list all your accomplishments, you list all the experiences you've had, those things where you're talking to people, they're like, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to do that. You got to have that experience. No way. And then the third thing I have people list out is the challenges they've overcome. Because often when people think about the challenges they faced, they don't see their resilience. They just see the challenges and they just think, oh, look at all these bad things that have happened in my life. And I always look at them and go, and how resilient you are because of those things. Because honestly, there are many people who would not get out of bed after experiencing those things throughout their lives. And we forget that. So creating your unbucket list is a great way to get more focused on, hey, my life has been good. It has been fulfilling. And a tool that I really love to teach couples to do is to ask each other that day, like every day if you can, one of two questions. What made you smile today? Because that starts to train your brain to look for the smile things that you want to then share with your partner. Or what are you proud of today? What's a challenge you faced and overcame? So having those types of questions that you can ask friends this, you can ask your partner, you do it in the workplace too, right? Team meeting, hey, let's just go around. What are you proud of today? Allows us to refocus our mind into the positives that happen in life.
Well, because you started speaking about relationships, I think this is a perfect segue into talking about what your main area of expertise is, relationships. So, what would be the most important thing about having a healthy relationship? And also, why having a strong relationship is important in your journey to fulfillment?
Yeah. So, one of the important reasons to have a good and healthy and fulfilling relationship is because it is actually correlated to life expectancy. You know, we have a strong, fulfilling relationship where we feel trust and respect and good communication and connection. All these things feel like we can be intimate with our partner. We're living longer. We're feeling much more fulfilled and joyful in our lives. You know, I shared those in the beginning. Those are my things. Um, because there's a sense that we have that person in our corner, even if they can be challenging and we get frustrated at them at times, that really we have a sense of we're not alone in the world. And I think often for couples, as I shared before, we hit these places after being together for so long where we start to question things. And that's actually really normal. And we should. It's just like us questioning our career or where are we living or all sorts of different things that come to mind that we question. We need to be questioning it because we need to be looking at our relationship as something that's growing. If I keep the plant in the same size pot the whole lifespan of the plant, it will never grow. If it grows, it will definitely fall to the side, right? There'll be, it will not help the plant. But if as the plant grows, I get it a bigger pot, I get it more of the support it needs, all of these things, you're going to have this beautiful plant that maybe blossoms, who knows, or has fruit to it. But we have to give it the structure and stability and support it needs. And so for me, that's about learning skills to having a healthy relationship. It isn't always about therapy. You know, I call myself both a relationship therapist and strategist because sometimes people just want the strategy and the techniques to improve their relationship. They don't necessarily want to go into like the deep dark closet and go, let me pull out my skeletons so that we can unpack this together and heal it. So if you're in the first, house where you're like, yeah, I'd just rather learn the strategy, that's perfect because we all need to learn new skills and public speaking, career choices. If we want to, hey, I want to get this next position, then I'm going to learn better team management. I've got to learn, there's just always things we're learning in our lives. But for some reason, we think our relationship should be something that just comes natural or quote easy. But it's not going to because we are individuals. I like to call us, we're our own smoothie of culture, family, temperament, personality, all the things, right? And then our partner is that. And then we come together and we're like, is this working or not? We are going to naturally want to shift and change things. And, we're in a world of technology, right? So like there's always the new iPhone, there's always the new laptop, there's always the new tablet. It doesn't mean the one before it was broken. It doesn't mean that it didn't work. It's usually because there's the new bright, shiny object in front of us, right? And I say to couples, it's the same thing. It's like sometimes you need to upgrade your relationship, but together. And to be able to see that, hey, by us tearing down the old and rebuilding the new, we are stronger and we feel more confident in our lives. And when I think about confidence in the workplace and I think about confidence in our personal lives, I have never met somebody who said, "Oh, I feel totally confident and I have a horrible relationship at home." No. When we feel stable and good in our relationship, when we feel like we can communicate and be heard and get good feedback, and it's this like good give and take, we're confident in so many other areas of our lives. We're willing to take healthy risks. We're willing to step up and try new things. So it's kind of essential to have a healthy relationship. Now, if that's a long-term marriage partner or just someone that you've committed to, it can look very different for anyone. But that is, I think, for me, one of the biggest keys in the 15 years I've worked with people to them feeling good in their life, to them feeling fulfilled is around having a strong, stable relationship.
This is so true. From personal experience, I know that anytime there is any sort of trouble at home, I'm mad at my husband for something, and it immediately creates so much stress in every other area of my life.
Yep.
When everything is great and I feel very happy at home, everything flows everywhere else, or at least it feels like, okay, well, I can work this out
Hmm.
when you have this really strong backup at
Yeah,
home.
you're not alone.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, it's so true. But what do you think is the biggest mistake that people make in their relationships when, especially when they get, into, 15, 20, 25 years of marriage and things kind of become shaky a little bit? What do you think is the biggest mistake people make at that point?
I think at that point, if I'm honest, and this isn't just because I'm a therapist, it's not being willing to get help. And that help could be reading a book together, watching a video, doing a course online, whatever it might be, really thinking you are above getting support. And often it's not that people feel above getting support, they feel uncomfortable
Yeah.
getting support, they feel like a failure. But there's a point where you have to put your ego to the side and say, yeah, things are bumpy. And I was sharing with I'm sharing this with you before that often what happens is couples come and see me when one of them has said, "No, I'm serious. I will leave you. We will get divorced if we don't work on the relationship." And I always think, why does it have to get to this point? If a year ago you had come to see me, it would have been a shorter time working with me, less information you would have had to take in, and less habits you would have had to change, but you weren't willing. And they will always say to me, "I don't know. I don't know why, because I see now the value. Had I just come a year ago, this would never have gotten to this level. My partner would not have been 1 foot out the door."
Mm.
And so I think the biggest mistake that couples make when they've been together for longer is that just that assumption it will always be this way and not willing to get the help. Not willing
Yeah.
to get, again, it can be a book, it can be an online program, there's all sorts of great material out there. Some of it's free, some of it you have to pay for. I find that if I want to really hold myself accountable, I've got to put money on it. I've got to put time, energy, and money, the three big things of currency. And if I don't, then I'm not actually motivated to to improve things, to actually get it done. So if you're willing to put some money down and go, "No, I want to work on this. I'm going to invest in it because I know that the divorce would be more expensive. I know that the pain of waiting another year will be worse, and that the time and energy that we are going to lose by being angry at each other, by stonewalling each other, by whatever it might be, is not worth it, right? Like it's worth the investment in taking care of ourselves. And I'm speaking as somebody who's been married for 11 years. I'm together with my husband for 15. We do the work. He is not a therapy person. Totally fine. He's German. Absolutely. And there are many
Yeah,
Germans who
he's
do
the one
therapy,
who is
but
six.
right? Like yeah, exactly. It's a 6. And I'm like, it's an 8. The American, it's a 10. It's amazing. But he will not, but he will read the books. We will do a book club together. He will let me, all the stuff that I try out with my couples, he lets me try out on us and gives me feedback. Sometimes a little bit harsh with this feedback, but I'm like, you know what? You're not my client. So, but he will do that. He will listen to a podcast if I send it to him. I don't send him social media stuff. Don't send him reels. Don't send him things like that. Real educational material. He likes podcasts. I know that's how he likes to learn. He likes to read books. So those are the types of things. And I never say to him, you need to read this or listen to this. I say, we need to. We need to. And let's talk later about our takeaways, because we both need to learn the skills. Even as a relationship strategist and therapist, I'm having to learn these skills in the context of my relationship. And so even though I know what to do, I'm not the therapist in my relationship. I'm the wife, right? And so I have to go, okay, I've got my own stuff I've got to work through to get to a place where I can speak to you that calmly and not, start getting defensive when you ask that question a certain way, because that's my stuff, because I am human. So being able to talk with your partner about, okay, if you're not willing to go work with someone, totally fine. How about, like, what would be the things you're willing to do? What are your yeses? And what would make something a yes if at first you feel like it's a no? Well, I don't want to attend a group with other couples because it's embarrassing or it would be weird. Okay, well, what would make it a yes? Well, maybe if, whatever it might be, maybe if it feels a little more anonymous and it's more like a chat group, like a WhatsApp group, we can write in our stuff, or maybe this would make it. Anytime your partner says no, it's a hard no, say, well, what would make it a yes? That's with any question, any decision you need to make in life, but especially when it comes to the context of working on your relationship, because there's got to be something where they're willing to compromise or budge to support the two of you. Because again, the longer you're with each other, the more you feel stuck. And sadly, the grass will look greener in other pastures. But I always say you're going to have to cut the grass no matter what. And you're going to be the same person in that relationship too. So you're going to have to do the work no matter what. And people usually go like, you're right. So dopamine is great. Most affairs last only a certain amount of time based off of how much dopamine's coming out for it and the excitement and the endorphins. And then they crash because you realize, it was just a high. It wasn't always a real relationship. And in this age group, many divorces occur because of affairs, whether it be emotional or physical affairs. And I'm talking about the midlife age group. And the problem around that is they didn't even give it a chance prior to having the affair to work on things.
Yeah.
They just said it's stuck like this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just feel, I don't know, they feel, number one, I think they feel that, well, okay, it's always up and down, things always up and down. And even if right now we're down, we're going to get up. It's just, a lot of people just feel that it will improve by itself. And a lot of times things improve and then they go back down. Yeah. And also, I think there is a little bit of this stigma around asking for help.
Right.
Wouldn't you say so? I think there is a lot of it, especially in the US. I don't know how it is in Europe. Asking for help is like, what, I can't do it myself. I can do it myself. We'll figure it out, right? Versus actually going and asking for help.
I totally would agree with that. And it's so funny because there will be things that those people who are like, I don't like asking for help, they will ask for help about certain things, but not about their relationship, because that feels very vulnerable. However, almost all of us have relationship problems. Almost all of us feel imposter syndrome at some point in our lives. Almost all of us feel a sense of, is this really fulfilling? Am I enjoying this? Do I feel a sense of purpose in my life right now? So why wouldn't it be great to be able to say, I'd like to take this mental load off of my shoulders and my mind and get your point of view on it and hear your stories of what's helped you so that I know I'm not alone.
Yeah. Well, I really, really like this advice. And so for those of our listeners who are hearing this and think, okay, well, this all makes a lot of sense. And Katie sounds like she knows what she's doing. If somebody wanted to learn more about how you help with relationships, how you help with coaching and strategic advice and therapy and all of this, how can they learn more about you and how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So best place is either Instagram, LinkedIn, or my website. So I'm sure those links will be below, but Instagram is at katie.rössler. LinkedIn, you just find me at Katie Rössler. I have a funny two dots over my O for those of you who don't know in Germany, the O sometimes has an umlaut over it. But you don't have to worry about that when you do any of the writing. And then my website is katierössler.com. And I'd really love to offer your listeners, I have this great question worksheet for couples that takes the guesswork out of how do we have more meaningful conversations in those moments where it's a little bit quiet and we're like, I kind of want to like talk, but I don't know what to say. And it's called 18 Questions for Couples. And it's based off of the 6 core areas of our relationship, like trust and respect, sex and intimacy, connection, goal setting, shared responsibility, which is definitely something that impacts a lot of relationships. And there's 3 questions for each category for you and your partner to better understand each other. I have vetted them to make sure that they don't lead to arguments too quickly for most couples. I've been like, okay, where could this go? They're pretty PG when it comes to arguments, but it definitely helps couples to have greater intimacy and a deeper connection. So that's a free resource I'd love to give to your listeners. It is katierössler.com/18-questions, but you don't want to have to write all that. We'll make sure it's below. And if you want to listen to my podcast, it's called Relationship Reset, all about relationships, 15 to 20 minutes, just easy bite-sized material for you to think on as you're traveling from work to home or cooking or doing whatever, going for a walk. It's a great way for you to start working on your relationship easily.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, all the links are going to be in the show notes. So you can just grab those links from below. All right, Katie, thank you so much for coming to my podcast. Thank you for being such a wonderful guest. Thank you for your knowledge, for sharing your wisdom with us. And I cannot wait to catch up with you again.
Thank you, Victoria. I enjoyed this a lot.
There you have it. I love Katie's approach to redefining fulfillment, avoiding burnout, and strengthening our relationships. Whether it's in our careers or personal lives, so much of our happiness comes from the way we choose to engage with the people and opportunities around us. So I hope you're going to take Katie's advice and apply it to your life right away. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little more clarity and connection in their life. See you in the next episode. Bye for now.